So we have the chest all painted, and I used General Finishes milk paint, which actually doesn't have any milk in it. It's just an acrylic, I think, that has kind of that milk paint look, which is just kind of an old, dusty kind of look. You paint it with anything. Traditionally, chests were painted, and that is because they get beat up. And the easiest finish to renew is a paint finish, and you can just put another coat of paint on it and it looks as good as new. Whereas if you get a lacquer finish or a shellac finish or a varnish finish messed up, the repair is no fun. In fact, the best way to repair it is to paint it. So I've got this all painted, 2 coats of black. Black's a traditional color, blue's a traditional color, baby poo green, also a traditional color, and just be done with it. We've installed some casters here that you can see on the bottom, and I think you'll also notice that the bottom is not finished and the inside is not finished. That's also very traditional. You don't want to put any finish on the inside because the smell will be nasty, and there's no real need for it. The wood does not care. It breathes just fine with finish only on one side. So no, I didn't even finish the bottom. No one will see it except the bugs. I used metal casters. These are from the home center too. They're about $3 each. And I like the metal ones because they're so darn durable. You can use rubber if you like rubber. The last thing I'm going to add here on the outside of the chest is a lift, chest lifts. These make life so much easier for moving this thing around. And you generally don't lift with this thing. I mean, you don't carry it around. All you do is you lift it, and then when you carry it, you put your hands here, or you put your hands under this top skirt. So these screws, it's just going to be screwed in for this chest, so it doesn't take the full, weight of the entire chest on each handle. And it would be very unbalanced anyway if you just lifted it by this. I mean, it would pitch and yaw all over. So we're going to, this is just a pickup, and we're going to put one in. Now, if I were going to make a lift or a big handle that I was going to carry this by, I would bolt this through. Or if it were a wooden handle, I would screw through this side and screw through the inside. It's centered on the chest, and it is not on the middle, it's just up a little bit. And I do this by eye. So this is 10 3/8 from either end, and then I like how that looks. It looks about right, and that's the rule. If it looks fair, it is fair. So I'm just gonna drive these screws in, and then flip it over and do the other side. The last thing on the inside of the chest, the last little bit of hardware I'm going to add is I'm going to put a little leather strap that will keep the lid from pitching back all the way when the lid is open. And that is totally optional. A lot of chests didn't even have that. They would rest the lid up against the wall or against the bench or whatever. So you can add that or you cannot add that. Your choice. So we are just very, very close to done. Let's talk about 2 of my favorite styles of tool chests and also the different types of joints that you have to choose from when you put them together. Over here on my right, this is called a Dutch tool chest, and it has a lot of really unique features to it that we're going to walk through, and also some different ways of building it. So this has a lid that comes down at a 30-degree angle. And so you lift it up, and then the hinges stop it, which is nice. And what is great about this style of chest is that you have this whole open area up here where you can just get and see all the tools that you need, depending on how tall you make the chest, because they come in different heights. But you can make this tall enough that it's more like a mechanic's tool chest in that these will be up near your bench, so you don't have to do any stooping for all the tools that you use over and over again. So that's one of the big advantages. Also, what I really like about this is sort of pre-runner to the Gerstner style chest that has a fall front, though it's not hinged and it doesn't slide back in. And this whole area down here is open and can be configured any way you want it. The Dutch would sometimes have a drawer here, and that would be for carrying the really flat tools, or sometimes that would be where all the fasteners were. Or you can put in cubby holes. This is just a wide open space for you to just chop it up for whatever is best for your work. The other really good thing about the Dutch chest is that it's fast to build, even totally traditional. This is built in a totally traditional manner and took maybe 2 days in the shop. And here's how the joinery goes together on the traditional Dutch. Now the bottom corner here, this corner here, and this corner down here, this is a through dovetail. You might not be able to see it through the paint, but this is through dovetailed, and that is the sort of the main strength. The tails are on this wall, and the pins are on the bottom wall, so that when you lift the chest, you have the tails helping to keep the bottom on. Now that's the major joint in this whole thing. There's a shelf under here that all the planes sit on, and this shelf is dadoed into the sides, so there's like a 1/4 inch dado. So this is carried into the sides with the dado, and then it is nailed. And you can see up here that there are some wrought head cut nails that are driven through. So glue, dados, and some wrought nails, and you are in good shape. Now, the rest of this chest is pretty much just screwed on. So this front panel here is screwed on here and then screwed into the shelf. That's fast to do. This bottom lip, which is what this hooks onto and also holds your tools, keeps them from sliding out. This bottom lip also screwed on. Doesn't get any simpler than that. The back is screwed onto the sides, but there are like 5 or 6 backboards up and down, and the grain runs horizontal, and those are joined with a tongue and a groove. So there's a tongue and a groove for each one of those, and it's screwed in. Now some people look at this chest and they say, well gosh, all this cross grain construction, this thing's going to just explode. Because you have all this, this is running in opposition to this, and really the only answer I can tell you is this chest was designed before wood movement was invented. Or, well, that's not a good answer. The real answer here is that these were made out of pine, made out of softwood. And softwood, once it settles down, moves less than hardwood. This is sugar pine, so either sugar pine or eastern white pine, they barely move at all in season. So little that it doesn't really make any difference. You don't even have to worry about wood movement. So pine was used not only for that reason, but also for the weight. This whole thing, with every tool in it I need to build any piece of casework, weighs only 97 pounds. And a lot of that is that weight loss is because I'm using pine and not maple or some other crazy wood. And if we turn our attention to the lid here, we can see that the lid is just one single panel of pine, but then I also, on the ends, I have these breadboard ends. And you can use breadboard ends to help keep the panel flat over the years. Or the other option is, if we look down at the panel that dropped off the front here, is if we look at this panel, it has battens that are screwed cross-grained, and that helps keep the panel flat. You can use the battens also on the lid. So I could put battens here and battens here. I've built Dutch chests that have battens. I was trying to save a little space, and so I use breadboard ends, which are a little more complex. Now, I'm sure there are other ways that you could complicate this chest with joinery to make it more difficult, but that's not how it was done. I mean, it's just not historically correct. So why would you do it? This design has survived for hundreds of years in Europe, and it is just an almost perfect design. So very simple, very quick to put together, and very useful. So over here on my left is the English style, what I call an English style, floor chest. that we've built for this DVD. And this chest is what I prefer. I've worked out of a chest like this since 1997, I believe, and really haven't been without a floor chest since then. And these are put together in a variety of ways, and we're going to talk about how I usually do it when I build chests for myself or for customers, and how we've done it for the DVD, which was also done historically. Now, all these ways are completely valid. I've seen them on chests that are 150 years old, so really your choices are wide open. So what you have here is, this main carcass of the chest. Traditionally, everything's made out of pine, just like the Dutch chest, but you would dovetail the shell. So here we have the shell, the carcass would be dovetailed, and you would put the tails on the front and the pins on the ends. And then you dovetail this all together. And then you have these skirts. Almost all chests have a lower skirt, and on good chests, this corner joint is dovetailed. But what's different is that the ends are the tails and the fronts and backs are the pins. And that means that these joints are in opposition to each other, and it'll hold the chest together for tighter and for years and years to come. Even if one of the joints fails, the other one will hold it together. So you have this like that in the best chests. The other thing you'll find is a miter, just a simple miter joint here at the corners. And the miter joint is the weakest of the form. I've seen so many chests with open miters, and this corner gets the abuse, more abuse than any other part of the chest. So another option that you see on these old chests, and it works better than a miter, doesn't look as good, but it works better, it's just a butt joint. And that's what we used in the DVD, is that these are screwed in from the outside, and these are just butted and then all trimmed and painted out, and it looks just fine. That survives abuse much better than a miter, almost as much. It survives almost as well as a dovetail. So you can use screws. You could use biscuits. You could use pocket screws. You could use a domino if you had a domino. All those would be good options. I still think either dovetails or screws are the two best and simplest options. I'm sure there are other ones out there. Speaking of other options, this I said is usually dovetailed. For the DVD, we used screws. You could use dominoes, you could use biscuits, you could use pocket screws. Any of those would be fine, and the chest would hold together just fine. So let's talk about this lid here, and how the lid is made, and the different options that you have for the lid. The rim around this lid, so there's a little rim there. That rim is what we call the dust seal. And so that nests into the rabbet that is created by this top skirt and the carcass itself, and it keeps the dust from blowing in and covering our tools. This is usually dovetailed around. This rim takes a whole bunch of abuse. And so I've dovetailed this one. You can glue and screw it with butt joints. You could miter it, which is the stupidest way to do it, because I've done it and it just comes loose, quickly. And there are lots of other ways to do it. You could spline it in. I've seen people spline them in. They're only, really dovetails and screws are probably the best option. Again, you can make the dovetail even better. And one of the ways you can do that is by reinforcing it with metal straps. Sometimes you'll see people cut a shallow rabbet all the way around the edge of the chest. And then they inset a piece of steel that is then screwed in to the chest all the way around. And because this rim just gets the snot beat out of it. The lid itself, traditionally would be either a single flat panel, which is the worst way to do it, because a single flat panel, even if it is pine, will move a little bit, especially if you have this cross-grain construction here, it will come loose. So the better way to deal with the little bit of wood movement here is to make it a frame and panel. Now, we've used plywood to defeat the wood movement, and plywood doesn't move. That's certainly one fine option. But a frame and panel where you have two rails and two stiles is going to be the most durable way to do it, joined with a mortise and tenon or a domino or pocket screws or whatever you want to use. And so that creates the main framework. And then we have the panel up here, and this is just a half-inch piece of plywood that we have glued and nailed onto the top to give some strength to the top, so you can lay heavy stuff on it. Traditionally, what they would do to make a raised panel is that the rails and stiles would have a groove in them, and then the panel would also have a groove in its long edge. And then instead of a tongue and groove, what you have is a groove and groove. So the groove in the panel would nest into the groove in the rails and the stiles. And that would make this panel literally raised above the surface of the rails and stiles and makes a very, very strong top. So those are the best ways to make tool chests. And I'm sure there are lots of other options out there that I haven't even thought of. But when I look at the historical record and I look at what has worked in my workshop and on the road, that the options we've discussed here are really good ones that you can't go wrong with. And sometimes you shouldn't even mess with tradition. And when it comes to tool chests, I think that's one of those places.